Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chenard. I'm here with Glen Willis and Tyler Jones, and we're recording. I don't even know what day it is anymore, Eastern time. I guess it's still Wednesday. It's after a
Yeah.
win over the Pelicans, and more importantly, a Trae Young trade to Washington. What do you think, Tyler?
I, you know, I think Glenn kind of he talked about it pretty extensively on the pod where he from Trey's perspective that I think Trey was looking for an opportunity to make the most money possible here, and I think the Hawks reasonably were. I think the Hawks at some point came up to Trey multiple times with a contract extension, and they were like, if you want to still be on this team, you got to take a pay cut. And Trey was like, I'm not doing that. And so and I think from the Hawks, like you can see why the Hawks were like, yeah, you got to take a pay cut because I talked about this, on the last pod with what I did at ATL 29, on the pods I did with the Hard Knock Hawks team. It's just a combination of factors, but the biggest one being that Jalen Johnson's just better than Trae Young as of today, combined with, you know, where Trae's value is on the floor kind of takes away from Jalen and vice versa. You know, I just don't see a scenario where if Jalen has the ball in his hands more, that Trae's able to make, like, I don't see a scenario where Trae maintains his value on this Hawks team just because of how they're playing basketball. I think one of the bigger things that kind of was like the last straw here a little bit, just beyond what we talked about on the last point, and I encourage everybody to listen to that, is that, Nikhil's growth as an offensive player. Like, I don't, if the Hawks probably did not expect Nikhil to be this level of score and to be this level of score without Trey. And I think the Hawks reasonably looked at it and were like, all right, Nikhil kind of fits more of what Jalen needs off the ball more than Trae Young. And I think that's kind of the picture here. And Kevin Pelton actually had a good piece. I'm gonna read a little bit of it if I can pull it up real fast. But he basically said that more or less the Hawks offense is actually league average when Jalen, Nikhil, and Dyson are on the floor at the same time. The problem is when they bring on these bench lineups. And I think the Hawks were reasonably like, okay, that's too much. That if we can be good off like solid, which is league average offensive with those two guys, if we can improve the bench units offense here, I think we're golden. And I don't think Trey was ever going to be in a bench role in the Atlanta Hawks. And also he'd be making too much money for that role. And I think CJ McCollum kind of offers a little bit what they've been lacking from a third ball handler score here off the bench in ways that I don't think Trey was ever going to come off the bench for this Hawks team. He was never going to take a secondary role, but like it's just a combination of things where it's like the biggest one just being like the Hawks see a real opportunity with Jalen and like ultimately Jalen and Trey. They probably made the calculus like this unit, they aren't additive to each other's game. If anything, they make each other worse. Where like Trey can't maintain his offensive value if Jalen is going to play like this offensively. If that like Trey has to have the ball in his hands, you know, and we've kind of like honest. If you look at it more or less since the Dejounte Murray trade, since the Hawks have taken more and more off of Trey's plate, it's not as if he's gotten more efficient. And so I think that's there's a lot of calculus going on here, but I just ultimately think like the Jalen Trey dynamic was never was never going to produce something that Nikhil and Jalen hadn't already shown at a better clip on both ends of the floor.
What do you think, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, a lot of Hawks fans on Twitter, Blue Sky, expressing like heartbroken, sad, uh, Trae is really good, you know. But I put out a 15-minute video on my Patreon for those that are subscribed can go see it. To be able to pay members and free members, you don't have to if you want to be a free member and see it, go see it. But for me, I think there's a couple things here. One is I just think this is clear evidence that the Hawks front office and Trey just didn't see eye to eye on what the value of his next contract should be. I think that is the principal driving force of this decision. And the Wizards have, I think, like 80 million in cap space projected for next year, and so they can accommodate a pretty big contract for Trey if they want to.
They almost have to get to like the floor. Like I think
Yeah,
that's yeah.
there's work. You have to get to the floor. There's work to do. There's definitely work to do there. Um, And so for me, it's like watching Trey leave and say, it's a couple of things. One-on-one is it's a business. That's like 90% of this. But the other part is like, I know Hawks fans felt a connection to him and enjoyed watching him play. But for me, I was like, there's a couple of things going on here. One is I don't know if everyone recognizes this, but the amount of physicality the officials are letting teams have this year is a wildly different than last year. And for a small guard, that makes the job way harder. It makes the job way harder. But what do you do with that? Like I think I can for me I can hold space myself for appreciating what Trey gave this franchise, appreciating for how he showed up in the city, appreciating the growth that he showed across the 7 years he's been here and all that stuff, but also recognizing like you have a small guard. It's like it's harder now than it was last year. I don't necessarily like how that baseline changed so much, and it's feels a little unfair. But there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing any of the three of us can do about it. That's just what they've allowed. And so that's an interesting thing for me. But Tyler's talked. I don't know. It feels like the last two, three, four episodes about how you have to be very capable defensively to win games in this league right now, and that you really have to have that. In the last episode, I don't remember if it was the last one or the one before, we talked about how um, distracting it is to make four guys on the floor with trade defensively. Like, how, do we keep them out of bad spots? We keep them out of trouble. And I don't want that to reflect poorly on Trey. I think at all. Like Trey is a maestro offensively. That's unquestionable, for me. But like I think Otzi looks at first apron, second apron tax. Does Tony ever pay the tax? He's never paid the tax, and like what does this do to the rest of our ability to build depth on this roster? And I think that's what this kind of came down to. I think CJ's going to help the team. It's gonna be interesting to see does Nikhil keep starting? Does CJ come off the bench? What does that look like? Kispert gives them. I mean, Kispert's more offensive value than defensive value, but defensively he's still a pretty high level processor, knows where to be and all that sort of stuff. And it's nice that Zach's not the only small forward on this roster anymore. I think that's helpful. Um, but I'll say there's two things. One is Trey and his representatives made a business decision to go somewhere that has the ability to pay him, I think, what he thinks he's worth. And I'm like, hey, more power to you, right? At the same time, I'm gonna miss watching him. I'm gonna miss watching him play in a Hawks uniform. That's a thing, That's a thing for me as well. I think you can hold both of those thoughts at the same time. Appreciate what he gave the franchise, the organization, the city, but also appreciate the Hawks front office looking at where he is now physically, where he is now in that sense. And it's gonna be interesting to watch him to go back to a very young team, a really young team, and see how he helps those young players grow and advance and improve. I'll still root for him. I definitely will still be rooting for him. Hope he does well. Hope he has a great experience there. Um, but this league is built around defensive capability now. It really is built around defensive capability now. I think that was the thing that the Hawks indexed on around this decision to trade him.
And Glenn, just to kind of back up your point here, because I got the Kevin Pelton piece pulled up. I just want to read a little quick couple paragraphs from it. It's still the actual shooting difference without Young is more than 3 times larger. Hawks opponents shoot a 63% effective field goal percentage with Young on the court and just 54% with him on the bench. The shot quality differential is more in line with Young's typical defensive impact and the shot making is likely a fluke. However, the bigger factor going forward is that Atlanta has found a way to survive without Young overall. The Hawks having minus zero point 0.4 net rating this season is their best when Young sits at any point in his career. So it's like I think it's it's, you know I think the 2-8 record with Trae playing versus the record that the Hawks have when he's not playing is overstates what's happening here. But I think the larger point is that because Trae used to be like a positive player, and the Hawks have dearly missed him when he's been on the bench. That's not been the case this year. If you know, and what KP kind of illustrating this piece is honestly, as long as one of Trae or Jalen is on the floor, the offense has been good enough for where their defense is. The problem is that one, when Trae's been playing defensively, they've just been getting absolutely destroyed. And it goes back to your point, Glenn. A lot of it is the added physicality. Like I think he's really struggled more than any season with how physical. Like, I mean, we honestly, you saw it tonight. Like, you saw it tonight. The Pelicans did not have the size to compete with the Hawks. The Hawks would all like Jalen Johnson at any point could just hit the all right, I'm just gonna drive to the rim. There's nothing nobody can do about it whenever things got a little tight. And the Hawks won the game easily, because the Pelicans didn't have a center, they didn't have a rim protecting center, and the Hawks were just kind of comfortable with able to do whatever they wanted to do on offense. And then defensively, they were just being the bigger team and like constantly at the rim, blocking shots. Like Trae wasn't helping with that. And I just, I just think with where the league is going for the Hawks in particular, like I tweeted and skeeted about this a couple of days ago where I was like, Trae had more value on the Hawks when his starting front court was Clint Capella and John Collins, two guys who needed service but didn't have the requisite ball skills. The team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals was a one-man show, and that one-man show worked. But once they ran up to the Heat in the next year's playoffs, and the Heat forced other guys to make plays, and they couldn't do it, the Hawks made a conscious decision over the next 3 years to bring in more offensive skill talent to take the pressure off Trae. What they got in return, however, is less value out of Trae as a basketball player. He was never able to recapture, basically, from the DeJounte Murray on going forward. There might be injury factors, athleticism factors going on with that, but ultimately, like the value of what he used to be when he earned that All NBA status in the 22 season, he just hasn't been that player. And I think the Hawks were looking at his contract. His contract was the biggest issue more than anything else. Well, I think him making so much money and the Hawks having to put in and the Hawks on the floor having to cover it for him so much defensively. I just think it reached the breaking point this year where it's like, we're winning without him and we're figuring stuff out offensively in ways that we didn't know we had in our game. Like, and he's not adding anything for us defensively. I think we can go forward without Trae Young. Now that look, man, I love Trae. I got all his jerseys, I got all his shoes. Like, I'm not here talking about the player. I'm talking about his value to this Hawks team. And his value outstripped his contract because, like I said earlier, what the Hawks need is a third guard like CJ McCollum. They didn't need a all-star caliber point guard because that's not what the Hawks were missing. They needed more shot creation off the bench who was comfortable playing 20 to 25 minutes a night. Like they didn't need a 32-minute player, 30 to 35-minute basketball player who they always have to be aware of where he is on the floor defensively. The NBA's just got, like, we talked about it multiple times. It's too physical. He's too small. That doesn't mean he can't win at the highest levels, but with how the Hawks are built now compared to how they were then, it's just a different like context. And I don't think he fit that context very well.
Kevin, I
Oh,
want to ask you a question.
was that?
I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
You did media availability. What was there tension? What did you experience tonight talking to players or coaches or whoever you talked to tonight? What was the what was the vibe, when you talked to people after the game tonight that would talk about it or would not talk about it?
I think it was just everybody was sort of respectful and, real. I think everybody had processed the situation probably in their minds coming into it, so it wasn't really like a shock for anybody. And I think more than one person used the term bittersweet, knowing that, it's hard for it to end, but, it's just the natural progression in Trey's career. Um, that it came out earlier today, like this was Trey's preferred destination.
Yep.
And I think they were appreciative. Somebody like Jalen, mentioned some of the things that he learned from Trae because he's of the people who spoke tonight, he was the one that played with him the longest. And so, yeah, I think that was just the general vibe was, it's part of the business and it's bittersweet. And everybody seemed, respectful. There were some smiles, but they weren't like, I'm not talking about like gleeful smiles, but like those wry kind of bittersweet smiles, like, that this was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, why was it a preferred destination for Trae? Well, I think number one, going back to the business side of it, it's a preferred destination because he feels like that's a place where he can get a contract extension done.
Yeah.
But number two, they've got the right kind of big to put next to him,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, I've seen the stat floating out there. Oh, Kristaps and Jalen and Trae only played 47 minutes together. Doesn't matter. That wasn't going to work. Like
Yep.
that, it was, you were going to have Kristaps and drop. You were going to have Trae fighting over screens. There's so much room in the middle. Jalen is not developed and aware enough to cover that much ground. Like he's just not consistent enough to do that. So it was just never going to work. Like I don't care that it was only 47 minutes. If they had been healthy, it wouldn't really have changed what the ultimate outcome of that trio was going to be.
Yeah.
So in SAR, we'll have to see what ends up happening there otherwise in Washington and how that team develops. But like that's the beginning of two players that can have a symbiotic relationship like that. Sar can do stuff for Trae, and Trae can do stuff for Sar, and maybe that will work. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like the point I wanted to make was kind of one that Glenn already hit on. I think I was going to be a little bit more vociferous and sad and regretful for the direction of the league. I'm not even going to pin it all on the referees. I think part of it's just kind of algorithm and analysis driven.
Mhm.
Um,
It's,
that
yeah,
it's all about power basketballs and foul as much as you can because they're not all going to get called. Like it's at the direction of the league, I think as an entertainment product is getting a little bit worse. There are a lot of teams that play the same way. It's a style that hinges a little bit too much on refereeing. A lot of the teams play very similar styles, and so it's tough for a small guard, but I think it's tough for the fans too. And so like someone like Trae appealed to the fans. Like he played a cerebral game. He played a very beautiful game. Like his, just starting from where he is as a passer just makes it such an entertaining product to watch. And over the history of the league, the trends in play have kind of waxed and waned from the 80s, to the 90s, where when things sort of switched to defenses and hand checking was allowed. And then, 10 years after that, it's Steve Nash and the Suns playing the 6 seconds or less offense, 7 seconds. I don't even know the right number.
I think
But
it's a
like
second.
there was a state once the hand checking went away and the play style was right, like, that there was a place for a small guard in that era of the league.
Yeah.
And now we're swinging back the other way to where it's going to be a little less artsy, a little more gritty. I'm not sure that it's better for the fans sitting in the arena, the ones sitting at home. Uh, to have an actual beautiful basketball product to watch. But I feel like the Hawks at least recognize it, right?
Yeah.
And I going back to the business side of things, I still think number one, it's just about where could Trae get his next contract that he wanted. It kind of had to be somewhere else, just because the pay cut, in my mind, is coming. How big it's going to be, it's probably less in Washington than compared to anywhere else. So it's a business thing, but it's also, I think, from the Hawk side, and not trying to get, they didn't get a whole lot here. Like I don't even want to talk about CJ McCollum tonight, to be honest. Like I don't think, like, is he going to be here in 6 months? I don't know. Like I don't know. So
Yeah.
like I think it's just a matter of getting Trae a destination,
Yeah.
um, and making the salaries work. And they couldn't get a whole lot back, but I think they realize what they needed versus what Trae needed. And hopefully, if they get nothing else out of this from the Hawk side of thing, hopefully at least they engendered some goodwill with Trae's agency, and just superstar players around the league that recognize that, hey, we tried to do what was in the best interest of a player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. I think all of that is spot on, right? So I think you look at what Trey's given the organization for all the time he's been here, and his agents approaching the front office and wanting to maneuver him where he can be and do right by him. I think Trey's gonna appreciate that. That they didn't just trade them wherever they could trade him to generate maximum value. You know, I think that breeds goodwill, and I think Hawks fans are like, man, when Trey's, I don't know what, 33, 34, and like, could he come back and like play on the second unit and like finish like that would be amazing. I think
I,
that'd be
I mean, Kyle Korver was in the building, in the practice gym today, talking to Zachary Rizzo, saying it's like, if Trae comes back someday in whatever capacity, I think the organization and the city will embrace him, and you never know.
I agree with that, and I think it would be an amazing second iteration, or whatever you want to call it, right? I think so we'll see if that's a thing or not. But doing right by a player who gave you a lot, I mean, I think there's a lot of goodwill that's built there. And not just trading him to whatever team gave you the best package or whatever, or whatever that is. I think there's goodwill there. It's gonna be interesting to see when Trey comes back as a Wizard, the video that they put up and all that sort of stuff. I think it's going to be really emotional, for fans, and so there's just a lot of things to kind of think through around kind of the dominoes or whatever you think about. But yeah, just trying to do right by a guy who gave your organization everything he had for 7 years, and I think there's something to be said for that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think both sides made the best out of I wouldn't even necessarily call it a bad situation, but I think both sides more or less saw the writing on the wall, and they kind of worked together to figure the best pathway forward for both sides. Because like we talked about, I think with the Hawks, like just ultimately, I mean, the reality is, for as great as Trey was for the fans, how like funny it was watching, I'm right there with you, Kevin. Th- Look, the Pacers, the Pacers and Thunder playoff runs cracked the code. Team saw, team saw without question. You play hard, you play physical, you get after it. You can throw any five basketball players out there as long as they're big and physical.
Yeah.
And like if they're able to attack a mismatch, it doesn't matter. Just attack the mismatch. How many games have we watched where every team just attacks the mismatch? That's all teams do now. That's all they do. They don't run set, like they're not running these fancy set. The Hawks probably run the most. Them and the Warriors probably run the more advanced sets in the NBA,
Yeah.
with multiple plays or whatever. The rest of the team's just playing bully ball. Like, and so I think the Hawks needing. I think the Hawks just kind of saw like the writing on the wall a little bit, combined with how much Trey is making, and combined with the fact that I do think if the Hawks don't have this Pelicans pick, they might not make this trade. I think there's a reasonable outcome where if the Hawks don't have, if this draft wasn't as good as it's projected to be, and it's projected to be one of the all-time great drafts. Like this is a special draft class. If it wasn't that good and this Pelicans pick wasn't projected to be like literally potentially have the best odds for the number one overall pick, they might keep Trae with Jalen and try to figure something, like go through all avenues because that's the only pathway forward they have. But because they have this pick, they realize we have a pathway to build a sustainable contender 3 to 5, maybe not the year after, but like 5 to 7 years stretch, just based on everybody's age and if they can get up them on good contracts. So like I just think the Hawks, they had the long term view in play where it's like it's not really about the like they're not worried about this season because this pick gives them a chance to really figure out where they could be in the next couple seasons. Understanding, yes, the East is weak, but like they're not playing to win the East. They're playing to win an NBA championship. And like I've said multiple times, even with all the guys healthy, for as good as I thought this team could be, even if KP was healthy throughout the season, I don't think ultimately they had enough physical talent to compete at the highest levels. And to me, I think this trade, understanding that they didn't get any picks or future assets for it, what they did get was cap space. And we saw this even this past season, how valuable cap space could be in a league where everybody is signing contract extensions. Everybody has 14 players that they like on their roster. The Hawks going to have roster spots open. The Hawks going to have cap space open this off season. They can pivot into a variety of ways to fill holes that they feel like they might have going forward to really help build this team out to be a true contender going forward.
Yep.
I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate all the stupid little smart things that Trae did as a player. Like all the times that the Hawks were in the bonus with like 2 minutes left in the first quarter, and he just absolutely dead knew how to get somebody to foul him, like every single
From
time.
dumb defender to foul him.
All the times that he like knew, okay, 2 for 1, like he had the clock in his head, like he would never mess up the time on a 2 for 1. There was one time like he had an uncontested rebound with like 27 seconds on the clock left in the quarter, and he just kind of let the ball dribble for a couple minutes so that he could just make sure that it was a one possession shot clock and the other team, wouldn't have any time left. Like the time like he tied somebody up for a jump ball in the paint and he had the ball for like a second and a half with somebody who was clearly bigger and stronger than him. And when Clint Capella put his hands in the mix, Trae got his out real fast because he didn't want to be in the jump ball. Like just the level of intelligence and savvy and just ruthless mind play with respect to the game was just second to none. And I don't know. This wasn't a question. It's just a moment of appreciation because I think I appreciated that more than anything.
Yeah, and offensively, sees the whole floor, like every second, like
The
sees
whole
the whole
floor.
floor, right? And oh, someone's cheating over from over here, so Bogey's wide open in the left corner for open three, or whatever it is. Just his ability to just detect every little vulnerability that opposing defense is showing you and to attack that. I mean, it's it's impressive. It's really, really, really impressive what he did and what he gave and his ability to do that. And you know, I hope. I mean, I've talked with a few people kind of offline behind the scenes around Washington has a serious attendance issue, right? I'm like, hey, Wizards fan, go watch this guy because like I mean, he's fun to watch. He's processing what he sees, how fast he detects a literal vulnerability and how a defense is set up to cover the strong side or the weak side or overplayed or whatever, and his ability to just hit a pass like just boom, just like that. It's special. It's really special. And I'm gonna miss watching him play in a Hawks uniform. I understand the business decision that both parts of this process worked through, and I respect it and I appreciate that they collaborated and got and worked through it. But there aren't many guys like him that see literally everything and know how to just boom attack one little over rotation, one little overplay, one little someone pulled in from the corner, the low man pulled in too close when there's not a lot of guys that do that, and it's impressive. I mean, I know people this year will point at record when Trae played and didn't Trae. I don't care about that. I don't really care about that at all. The Hawks want to be a bigger team. I think that's clear. They want to be a more stout defensive team. I think that's clear. CJ doesn't really help that. CJ self creation is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And Kispert gives him another big wing, and he's not like that great on defense. But he's smart and he's a processor. He knows where to be. And he can really shoot the basketball. And he really sprints. He sprints hard in transition and sprints to his spots in transition. And so it's nice that they don't have one small forward on the roster anymore. They have two small forwards on the roster now. That'll be great. But I mean, just sometimes I'll go back after a game and watch a few possessions where Trey just in a microsecond saw the vulnerability the other defense was giving him and just attacked it and created a nice, easy shot for someone. Hawks aren't going to have that anymore. I love how Dyson attacks the front of the rim now with confidence. I love how Nikhil pushes downhill and tries to put pressure on the rim now. Zach was great tonight. Zach was great shooting the ball from three. Hawks fans feel sometimes express frustration for him, but like the offense is going to be different. It's going to be a different thing now. But the way they run motion and split cuts and back cuts, all that sort of stuff, this team can do that. This team can do that without Trey. But I understand Hawks fans like I had so many DMs tonight for Hawks fans like, man, I'm sad. I'm sad. That was hard to watch. It was hard to watch Trey leave the building, all that sort of stuff. And I get it. And I was trying to be affectionate and supportive of people who are reaching out to me. Because I think that's a real thing for a fan base. But yeah, it feels weird. But I'm still gonna root for him every game he plays in the league. Still gonna root for him.
Yeah, I mean, Trey's like, his to me, his greatest gift was his spatial awareness as a basketball player and his reaction time with that. Like, he always knew where, not only did he know where all other nine basketball players were on the floor, particularly on offense, but he also knew like when a defender was going to reach, when they were going to be vulnerable for a foul, when a off ball defender was being lax, and he would give a signal to one of either John Collins or Clint Capella to roll hard to the rim for a dunk without setting the screen or whatnot. Like, you know, you special at create generating points at the rim and beyond the 3-point line for to create elite offense night after night after night in the NBA. Like, that is without question. And I appreciate Glenn talking about how the offense is going to be different without Trey. The reality is, like, it has been different. Like, he hasn't been there, and uh, when he has been there, I haven't liked what I've seen. Like, I didn't like what happened to Dyson Daniels when Trey was on the floor with him. I didn't even like particularly. Um, I didn't like there was it just felt like too much was being taken off the plate of other players for Trae Young, and this is not like me trying to like knock Trey here, like, oh, Trey's got to play different. I don't think Trey can play differently and be an elite player. Like, and so I can't expect Trey to play, but like the reality is with Dyson, the way he's shooting from three, it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. But they need Dyson for his defense, and like, to me, I, I felt this even before the season started. I said it was make or break year for Trey. And like, unfortunately for him, he got hurt. But from the games that we saw him play, it just for how much the Hawks are paying him, his salary slot, and combined with his reputation, like this felt like a situation like if he was going to be on the team, the Hawks were going to continue to try to make this work. It felt like it could get really bad and really sour. So to me, I'm really appreciative that the Hawks made the grown-up decision. We're like, hey, this is the best deal we can find for you, Trae.
Yep.
I know Washington's not going to be, winning anything anytime soon, but we feel like this is the best situation for you as a player to reestablish your value in this league, and maybe if you can find success with this Wizards team, kind of put some respect back on your name because like it just wasn't going to happen in Atlanta. Like it like to me, I guess the most bittersweet thing is that the team that Trae built in the Trae Young era, they're all gone. All his teammates are gone. Like, if we're being honest for a second, Bogey's gone, Capella's gone, John Collins is gone, Kevin Herter is gone. Like,
DeAndre
the
Hunter's
guy,
gone.
Onyeka's the only player left from the
Yeah.
conference
Onyeka's
finals run.
literally the only guy left
Only one.
from the Trae Young team that everybody has in their mind's eye. It's just Onyeka. You might want to even include Jalen, but Jalen was literally a different basketball player. Like Jalen, the 1 year that he played on that era of the team, 1.5 years, he was more of a defensive first player, bench. He was in the Mo Gay role, basically. So, like, more or less, he was literally in the Mo Gay
Yep.
role. So, like, it's tough to be like, man, I'm bittersweet, but it's like, I appreciate that the Hawks tried, you know? They, I get people's frustration with the tax issue. I understand that, but they legitimately tried so many different avenues to push their team from where they were after that Eastern Conference Finals run. And the reality is that they could never find the pieces to replace Capella and Bogey as the stars that they were for those
Yep.
teams.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah. And they kept overpaying guys coming up for rookie contracts. Like, yeah, I love JC, but they overpaid him. I love DeAndre, but they overpaid him. It's like, and I always thought that was like kind of a Tony thing. But anyway, yeah, back to Trae. We're the last bit of this stretch here. Man, loved watching him play. Hope he does well in Washington. Going to root for him every day, the rest of the way. That's where I am, and just appreciate what he gave the team in the city and the organization.
All right. Well, I appreciate you jumping in quick, and I guess we'll say goodnight, Bob, and good night, Trey.
Good night, Trae.
Good night, Trey.